Alright, today we're going to do a quick function and safety check on the KelTec PF-9 9mm pistol. Anytime you reassemble your firearm after cleaning or for any other purpose, you want to run through a quick function check to make sure everything is working properly on your firearm. These checks are not specifically called out in the KelTec user manual. These are just general safety checks and functionality checks for semi-automatic handguns. Alright, first, before we do any kind of testing or manipulations on a firearm, we need to make sure it is unloaded. So take out the magazine, make sure the magazine is unloaded because we will be using that in the checks, and verify there are no rounds in the chamber. Alright, so the first check we're going to do is a magazine release test. So it's very simple, just take an empty magazine, put it into the firearm, make sure you cannot pull it out without pressing the magazine release, and then press the magazine release and make sure the magazine comes out very easily. Make sure you check that with all the magazines that you might have. The next thing we're going to check is slide lock on an empty magazine. When you're shooting and you use up all your ammunition, after your last round is fired, your slide should lock to the rear to let you know that your gun is empty. So to test that, take an empty magazine, load it into the gun, and just briskly rack the slide, and it should stay to the rear because the magazine should press the magazine stop up into the notch and lock the slide to the rear. Alright, the next thing we're going to check is just a quick trigger check to make sure the trigger works. So on the KelTec PF-9, you do not want to dry fire, which means you do not want to press the trigger without a round or a dummy round in the chamber, or you could damage your pistol. So if you want to test this gun and you're not at the range and you don't want to put live ammo in your firearm, which I don't recommend for testing, get yourself some 9mm snap caps. These are great to have around for testing purposes. I use A-Zoom. There's a lot of different brands out there. I'll put a link in the description. These are just fake ammunition. They have a little rubber piece on the back here where your firing pin is going to hit that to keep it from being damaged. So what we're just going to do is put a few dummy rounds into the magazine. Whenever you're going to press the trigger, always verify that you don't have any live ammunition in the area and definitely not in the chamber. Alright, so we're going to load dummy rounds into the firearm. We're going to close the slide. Alright, so we have one dummy round loaded into the chamber so we don't have an empty chamber. Okay, now it is safe to check your trigger. So what we're going to do, this is a double action only firearm. Every time you press the trigger, it's going to cock the hammer, which you can see in the back there, and drop the hammer on the firing pin. Alright, so the trigger works, and now we're going to test the trigger reset. And in order to fire again with the KelTec PF-9, you do need to cycle the action. We do have dummy rounds in here, so obviously the slide is not going to cycle, so you need to do that manually to get the gun ready to fire again. To check the trigger reset, point the gun in a safe direction, press the trigger and hold it to the rear. Simulate the gun firing by briskly racking the slide, and then going to let the trigger come out. Now you have to go all the way almost to the front before you hear a click, and that's going to allow the trigger to work again. Okay, so that is the trigger reset test. Now we're going to do an out of battery test. So rack the slide one more time to prepare the gun to fire. An out of battery simply means that the slide is not fully closed. If for some reason you fire a round and the slide does not fully close, your gun should not be able to fire. You don't want to be able to fire a round without things being locked up tight, because that could cause damage to the weapon or serious injury. So what we want to do here, we have the gun ready to fire. Move the slide back about a ½ an inch, and that would be out of battery. So things are not locked up. And then press the trigger, and the trigger should not work. The trigger is just a dead trigger. Alright, and then pointing the gun still in a safe direction, let the slide come forward and press the trigger. Alright, that test was successful. Now the next test I like to do is an extract and eject test. So with this test, we're going to make sure that the gun extracts and ejects the rounds after you fire them. And we're going to use the dummy rounds for this. I'll take 5 dummy rounds, load them into a magazine, load the 5 dummy rounds into a verified empty firearm. Alright, and now we're going to close the slide And we have loaded a dummy round into the chamber, and then we have 4 more in the magazine. So all we're going to do here is simulate firing the gun by briskly racking the slide 5 times. Each time I rack the slide, the dummy round or snap cap that's in the chamber should be extracted and ejected out of the gun, and after the last round is ejected, the slide should lock to the rear. So that test looks just like this. All right, and the slide locked to the rear on the last round, and I have about 5 rounds over there on the floor, and the test was successful. Okay, so the last test is a very optional test, and this is only really necessary if you have loosened the sights and possibly gotten your sights out of alignment and you're not sure if they are accurate anymore. So you can go to the range and shoot some rounds and adjust it at the range, or if you want to get a good idea whether your sights are accurate without going to the range, you'll want to get yourself some kind of a bore sighter, which is basically just a laser. Now this one is particular for a 9mm, so we're going to put a laser in the firearm, and I'll show you how to make sure that your sights are accurate. With this particular sight mark laser bore sight, basically you're just going to put your 2 little batteries in here that come with it, put the lid on, you're going to see the laser come on. Now don't point it at your face or anyone's eye. Alright, now take the magazine out and drop the laser into the firearm. Alright, and then the laser should come out the barrel. Gently close your slide. Alright, and now we're going to aim it at the wall, and you want to aim it at the furthest wall that you have in your house. Maybe 20-30 feet would be a good place to sight in your firearm, especially if it's for personal defense. Alright, once you have your bore sight inserted into your gun, just pick a point on the wall as far away as possible, but you just want to line up your sights and see if the laser and the sights are both pointed at the same place on the wall. This is looking pretty accurate. I'd say I definitely don't want to change anything here. When I get to the range, I'll verify, but for our purposes here, or if I'm going to use this tonight to defend my house, if someone breaks in, I know that my sights are pretty doggone close. All right. And that is how you check your sights without going to the range. All right, I'm going to put a link below for the bore sight in the description. Thanks for watching. All right, that is the KelTec PF-9 function and safety check. This gun has passed all the tests, and now we're ready to carry or take it out to the range. Please check out the description below. I have dummy rounds listed down there if you want to pick some of those up. If you found this video helpful, please hit like below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.